Hello, everyone. Welcome to the lesson on formal and informal language in argumentative essay writing. So, in academic writing, especially argumentative essay, the way we present our ideas is very, very important. Having strong arguments is not enough. We also need to express our opinions using appropriate language. So, we all know that when it comes to academic writing, we have to use formal language. All right. Firstly, let us take a look at the learning outcomes for this lesson. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to identify the differences between formal and informal language, recognize inappropriate informal expressions in academic writing, and lastly, apply formal language in argumentative essays. That's our focus for today. All right. Next, why do we use formal language in argumentative essay? So we know that formal language helps writers to sound more professional, sound objective. And when you are writing your essay using formal language and tone, it presents your idea clearly, maintains your academic credibility, and at the same time, it avoids all the emotional and personal expressions. So, using formal language helps readers view your arguments as reliable and well supported. For example, instead of writing, I think social media is really bad for students, a more formal version of the sentence would be social media may have negative effects on students' academic performance. All right, so we can see the differences between informal language and formal language. Academic writing focuses on three aspects, which are facts, evidence, and logical reasoning. Even though we know that argumentative essay need to have a clear stance, but still you need to support using evidence, facts, and also logical reasoning. The next slide is on the key differences between informal language and formal language. So let's take a look at the main differences between informal and formal language. We know that informal language is commonly used when we communicate with our friends, our family, our relatives, or people we know well, which means it can be a casual conversation, all right, daily conversation. For example, in informal language, we often use contractions such as don't. Informal language is more towards personal and casual, so we are allowed to use contractions, any short forms, and we will be using slang and common expressions when we are communicating verbally with the people that we know really well. But when it comes to academic writing, we emphasize on including or writing the sentences in formal language and formal tone. Why? Because it's more objective and more professional. It is a must for us to use or to construct the sentence using formal language when it comes to an academic writing, and we know that we are focusing on writing an argumentative essay. When we are writing the sentences in formal language, we tend to sound more objective, more professional, and when it comes to formal language, you are not allowed to use contractions. So instead of writing the word don't, you have to write it in a full word, do not. All right. And we are not going to use slang, but when it comes to writing, our vocab should be precise. Now, here are some examples of contraction being used in informal writing. The first one is the thing that I've explained just now, which is don't. And if we want to make it formal, we use it as do not. We also have can't, cannot. Won't should be will not. Isn't should be is not. All right. So contractions, the definition of contractions are the shortened form of word. While they are acceptable in everyday conversation or communication, they are generally avoided in argumentative essays. So, for example, instead of writing a sentence starting with students don't realize the importance of time management, you need to improvise the sentence using formal language, which will become students do not realize the importance of time management. All right. So contractions is not allowed in academic writing. You have to use the full form of word. All right. Now moving on to the next slide. The next slide is emphasizing on avoiding personal and emotional expressions when it comes to writing argumentative essays. So, even though an argumentative essay, we know that it requires the writers to present their position, to present their stance, but the arguments should be supported by evidences, by reasonings, rather than merely personal feelings or expressions. All right. For example, I strongly believe that online learning is better. This is an example sentence for informal language. So the sentence focuses on the writer's personal belief. But now we are going to change the sentence into more academic version. Sounds evidence suggests that online learning provides greater flexibility for students. So now it sounds more academic. All right. So avoid these phrases such as I think, I strongly believe, everyone knows that. Instead, you can use it can be argued that research suggests that evidence indicates that you can include your personal opinion but not 100% based on your personal opinion. You still need to support your argument with evidences. Next, avoid informal vocabulary. So we are not just focusing on the slang or the contractions, but we have to also pay attention to the vocab that we are going to use when we are writing an argumentative essay. All right. Informal vocabulary. Writers should be very careful when choosing words, when choosing vocabulary. Some words are commonly used in conversations, but are not suitable when it comes to academic writing. Why? Because they are too general or they are too informal. For example, the sentence many kids use social media for different stuff. So we know that this sentence contains several informal words being used. A more formal version would be many children. Instead of using kids, you replace with the word children. Use social media for various purposes. Instead of using stuff, you can change it into other synonyms such as factors, aspects, and so on. All right, so try to avoid all the informal vocabulary when writing your argumentative essay and include formal vocabulary. Next, we are going to look at avoiding slang and conversational expressions. So, this is another common mistake is when we are using conversational expressions and slang. Expressions such as get rid of, expressions such as a lot of stuffs are commonly used in conversations, but this should be avoided when it comes to writing academic essays. So instead of doing this, writers should replace them with more precise academic expressions. So, for example, the sentence, I have two sentences here. The first one, informal example. Social media is a big deal nowadays. So, how to make it or how to write a sentence in a formal language? Social media has become an important aspect of modern society. All right, now this sounds more objective and more professional, which it suits academic writing. The second example sentence, students should get rid of bad habits. This is informal way of writing. But how to improvise it using formal language? Students should eliminate unhealthy behaviors. All right, so these are clear examples of sentences, which means when you are writing any sentences to be included in your argumentative essay, you have to remember you need to avoid all the slangs and conversational expressions. Now we have reached to the last slide, which is the conclusion or the summary of the lesson. So to conclude, a formal language plays an important role when it comes to argumentative essay writing. So when writing an academic essay, you have to remember to use formal vocabulary. You have to remember that you need to avoid all the short forms and contractions, avoid slang and casual expressions, reduce your personal opinions, and support your arguments with evidence. All right. So, in short, formal language is equals to be clear, objective, and sounds academic. A strong argumentative essay does not only depend on good arguments. If you have good arguments, it doesn't mean that your argumentative essay is good, but also on the way all the arguments are being communicated. So you have to use the formal tone, formal language. By applying this formal language appropriately, then your writing will become clearer, will be more professional, and more convincing for the readers. All right. So I guess that is all for this lesson. Thank you so much for listening.